let's go around. Let's talk about three movies that sort of define who we are as people. Let the listeners know who we are. Esteban?
I think the main one would probably be Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind for me. As well as the movie Fight Club.
Okay.
And
Ooh, yeah, David Fincher.
Schindler's
Master.
List.
Ooh,
Schindler's
Stephen
List.
King screenplay. No, that's Shawshank Redemption. My bad.
Wait, what did you guys hear? I said Schindler's List.
No, yeah, I heard.
Oh, my
List
brain.
as well.
Yeah, my brain went all. Speaking of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, you guys remember when the Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice posters came out and they totally ripped off the posters for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind?
Yeah, I think that happens a lot, but it's hard to make posters nowadays without having somebody's face plastered all over.
All right, Jestro.
The Taste of Tea. I don't know off the top of my head who directed it, but it's a Japanese film about a family living in a small town. It's absurd in all the right ways.
Okay.
Dread, because that movie is really, really brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And it just popped in my head for some reason. I don't know. You ask me in 20 minutes, it'll be a different movie. And of course, the number one, The Matrix.
Of course.
By the then Wachowski brothers. And Kim Jong-un, what about you? What are the first three movies that define you as a human being?
As for me, I've recently discovered through a website called Flickchart that my favorite movie of all time is Guardians of the Galaxy. Below that, but not in any way inferior, is Kingsman and Spy, I would say, as my top three.
Interesting.
I have there's a certain style there that can be seen, I suppose.
Okay, I see. All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to Star Wars. What would you guys say Star Wars means to you as a person? Ryan Jester Romero.
Okay. Well, I think that it means like a large-scale battle not on a planet. So like the Star and the Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think that the films necessarily reflect the name.
So what you're saying is that what the movie means to you is more of just a form of storytelling.
Yeah, because when I hear Star Wars, I don't immediately think of the movies. I think of the comics, I think of the novels, I think of the video games. So I think of, like it's a whole other, it's its own type of storytelling. I don't know if it's its own type of storytelling, but it's definitely its own mythology. It's its own thing. Like, it's not derivative of other. I mean, it is derivative of Flash Gordon and John Carpenter of Mars and all those things, but it's kind of transcended and become the thing everyone else rips off.
As far as goes with me, I unfortunately didn't grow up with Star Wars. I started watching it at maybe like around 15. And unfortunately, the first one I saw was the one we're going to be discussing today. So I didn't really get hit with the good stuff at first. I had to go through the initial three. So as far as like a nostalgia factor to it, it doesn't really apply to me. But having viewed all of them afterwards, I can grow to appreciate what it's become. But unfortunately, the hardcore love is not there for me.
Yeah,
but I can definitely appreciate it.
And full disclosure, I'm like you. I didn't really get into Star Wars until Phantom Menace came out also, but I had played the games, so I guess that's the nostalgia I would.
Yeah.
What about you, Kim Jong-un?
As for me, I did watch the original trilogy as a child. That, along with the opinions of my peers, so to speak, did impact my opinion at the time. But Star Wars to me was the story of the Skywalkers. For a story that's so all-encompassing, it's a story about one family.
Yeah.
But I did try to watch The Phantom Menace as if I was watching this movie first, as if I had never seen a Star Wars film ever before, and it was a little bit difficult. But yeah, that's what Star Wars is to me. It's the story of this one family. The entire family is strong in the Force. Now, my second question for you guys is, do you think that this movie could have existed by itself, or did it need to be part of this larger universe to exist?
I think to exist, yeah. I think this one could have been by itself because it is episode 1, whatever the fuck that means. Yeah, but I do have to wonder if they weren't kind of obligated to lay the foundations for stuff that was already existing, what the film would have been like.
As a film itself? Probably not. I don't think anyone would have probably taken too much of an interest afterwards about what happened to these people.
Well said, well said. No, I totally agree. The ending has way too many loose ends, but it's because a million other movies are coming afterward that you forgive it.
Yeah.
And the comics. As for me, yeah, I did try to watch it objectively, and it was a little bit difficult. There were some moments where I couldn't quite forget that I'd ever seen a Star Wars film. It seemed a little bit too like tongue-in-cheek, like look at who we're showing you.
Yeah.
At moments. So I don't think those moments would have held as much power had there not been any previous films. But
yeah,
that said, that could go for most popular films today.
Yeah, no, but one thing I do like about that, there are certain things that they just treat as real things, like when Anakin talks to Qui-Gon Jinn about, oh, that you're a Jedi because you got a laser sword. If this were the first installment of a movie, they'd have to fucking explain, oh, this is a lightsaber and blah, 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 blah. But in that one, it was just like, I see your thing. It's real. Yeah, okay. We treat it like it's a real thing as if it were a gun in our world or whatever, or a katana. So.
And as for my third question, does it hold up? Esteban, you have the floor.
The Phantom Menace by itself?
Yes.
No. I don't think so. As a whole, it was not a very spectacular picture. You know, there could have been maybe a little bit of backstory that could have gone on as far as possibly, I guess, quote-unquote, canon, but as a whole, it was not very necessary. So, no, I don't think it holds up.
Okay. Jestro?
I think that's some of the special effects still hold up really well, and some of the special effects do not. Some of the special effects like fucking big ass pieces of shit. But others, I look at it and I'm like, there's shit coming out on the Sci-Fi Channel that looks just as good as this, and this movie is 18 years old. You know, that's not bad. I do have to say that given the current trends in cinematography, it's refreshing to not have shaky cam. So that definitely dates it to being at least 10 years old, but I like it. I do not like shaky cam, handheld shit. So,
as for me, in terms of story, it's weak, but there's weaker stories. I think because it's Star Wars and it's so beloved that maybe it gets a little harsher end of the stick, but I feel like it holds up. Like, you know, if I were to watch, I know it's much older, but like if I were to watch Labyrinth, like that looks like crap today. Watching The Phantom Menace and knowing that it came out in 1999, I was like, you know what? That's pretty good. Not as bad as I think it would be.
I mean, but The Matrix came out in 1999, and that movie's fucking incredible. The only thing that doesn't hold up in that movie is the soundtrack is dated, but the soundtrack's still badass. Okay, so I got a question here. Which of the following 2 fictional films would you actually want to watch? Good Will Hunting 2, Hunting Season, from the film Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, or Angels with Filthy Souls from Home Alone Part 1?
Angel with Filthy Souls, definitely. There's just not enough crime noir movies out there anymore. I would definitely love to see kind of like a revamp of that. Plus, the first one just sounds like garbage.
Good Will Hunting 2, hunting season?
What would that even be about?
If I remember correctly, it was like Matt Damon or Ben Affleck shotguns someone and then yells "applesauce, bitches." Something like it was. It was very. It wasn't at all anything like the first. It was very violent.
So Kim Jong-un, which one would you rather watch?
What was it? The movie called Angels with Dirty Faces.
Filthy Souls.
Filthy Souls. That like yeah, like that seems like a genuine movie that like there isn't one of those around, and I need to see this.
I always thought it was a real movie, and then I found out it wasn't real, and I was like, what the? I need to watch. I want to watch this. So anyway, the film starts with a long title crawl that's really boring about a bunch of politics stuff. Oh, so one of these things, Kim Jong-un and I were talking last week about this. Tell Esteban your theory, and the listeners, your theory about Jar Jar Binks in the grand scheme of Star Wars.
It wasn't necessarily my theory, but it was a theory that I read about, in which he utilized the Force in a drunken boxing sort of way, where it's sort of like he's playing the fool, but everything he does works out for him. He's pretending to be an idiot, was the theory.
Well, so on that note, I was noting the times when Qui-Gon would say stuff about the Force. And one of the first things he says to Obi-Wan is not to focus on the future, but to focus on the moment. He says that a couple times in the movie. So as somebody who's taken a screenwriting course, it's like, this is important. Let me write this down. And then you have a character who is like what Ben just described. So I'm like, okay, so I'm putting a theory together here. Jar Jar Binks is a drunken master of the Force. I jotted that down because he says it a couple times in the movie.
I really don't see Jar Jar being that intelligent. I mean, maybe as a character who inhabits the ability, but is not aware of it, but is able to use it to his advantage.
In that first scene with R2, as they're all like making their way outside, he bumps into Jar Jar, and then makes his way outside. And as he's on the ship, there's a laser that goes in the spot where he's supposed to be, and then he gets there, and then the other droids start getting blasted off the ship, and R2's the only one who survives. So arguably, you could say if Jar Jar weren't there, R2 would have died. I rewinded it a couple times. I'm only like 70% sure because you can't really tell depth perception of that laser, but there's a sparky laser that seems like it's trying to draw our attention right before the other droids start getting blasted. It's just one of those things that would add fuel to that theory that, you know, he might be pulling the strings and playing the idiot, playing the fool.
Okay.
So was I the only one who laughed when the Jedi Force ran away from the destroyers?
Almost like someone had strings on their characters and just yanked them out of scene. I feel like as far as the dialogue goes, it sounds like they were trying to go for a Shakespearean feel to it, just like very formal. But I don't think any of them, other than Liam Neeson, was able to pull that off. As far as the acting goes, it was hard to really portray the characters as best with the type of dialogue they got. Yeah. What do you guys think?
I agree. I thought it was, like Natalie Portman just playing a stoic queen. I don't know, but everybody else kind of feels like that too. And what's the actor who played Anakin's name? Because that kid's really trying, man. I give him an A for effort.
The one thing I remembered immediately upon seeing that kid was that apparently after this movie came out, he got so much hate mail that he quit acting.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for him, man. It's clearly not his fault because you got Natalie Portman, who does not suck, and she's playing a wooden character. You got Samuel L. Jackson, who also does not suck, and he looks like he's reading from a teleprompter. And then you mentioned Liam Neeson being a great actor, which I agree with, but I also think Ewan McGregor's great because he definitely feels like a younger version of Sir whatever his name is from episode 4.
There was a decision that didn't sit well with me. So I found it a bit dickish. After R2 saves the day,
and then make her clean it? I love that too.
Padme, go clean this droid. And I'm like, what?
I love that too.
Out of all the people you had You mean the queen go clean that droid?
Yeah, I wrote that too, man. I was like, that's some dick move, Keira Knightley. This film, as like somebody who studied 3D animation, this film is, groundbreaking. But the film itself is garbage because they clearly wanted to do more of that than hire a script supervisor.
I remember reading a book about one of the like special effects designers working on the pod racing scene, and he was talking about how excited George Lucas was because for George Lucas, the only reason he made like Indiana Jones episodes 4, 5, and 6, all of that was just so he could make episodes 1, 2, and 3 and do what he always wanted to do, which was make a kick-ass special effects studio, Industrial Light and Magic.
There are a lot of things that we take for granted now that they were doing for the first time in that movie. Like, I'm told that none of the people in the crowd in the pod racer have recycled animation. Like, they're all interacting in individual ways. I don't know. I haven't, zoomed in and frame by framed that, so I can't validify that. But that's impressive. And you got to remember, it came out around the same time as A Bug's Life. And at the time, that was the most amount of CGI characters you could put into a scene at the same time. Now we can have quadrillions. But yeah, that CGI army battle at the end between the Gungans and the droids, it looks like they're just fighting on the Microsoft wallpaper. But
I mean, aside from that, though, I was still okay with it. Like, it did look awkward, those tanks moving over that, like, land. Let's talk about the fact that Anakin had no father.
Yeah.
Was he just like an immaculate conception or something?
Yeah,
like, according to the direct quote of his mom, there was no father.
Yeah, I don't know if she's lying or if the Tatooine translation of Jesus is Anakin.
Later on, when Qui-Gon is talking about him to the Jedi Council, they reference a prophecy in which someone is born from just midichlorians.
But if you're going to bring in the Messiah stuff, why not continue that symbolism instead of deviating?
But see, I don't think they did. Because if you think about it, like what he's supposed to do is bring balance to the Force. And if you think about it, right now, the Star Wars galaxy is full of Jedi.
No, they're not. There are 2.
There's a Jedi Council.
Yeah.
There's more than 2 Jedi. There's only 2 Sith.
You're talking about right now, as in the movies that are currently coming out right now at the time of recording?
No. I mean, right now as of episode 1.
Yeah, okay. So there are 2 Sith and a bunch of Jedi.
And then there's that little school fucking thing with all the little kids.
Yeah.
Who are training to be Jedi.
Called Padawans.
That's what I mean. But that's what I mean. Like, in terms of bringing balance to the Force, he is bringing balance to the Force by going dark side.
Yeah, but Esteban's saying, why didn't he die on Easter and come back on Good Friday?
Yeah, where is his crown of thorns?
Did anyone else find it hard to, like, forget that Senator Palpatine was the Emperor?
Yes.
Every time I watched him, I couldn't help wondering if we were supposed to rewatch it with the knowledge that he is the Emperor.
Yeah, they didn't do a really good job hiding it. Like, he just put a cloak on and he kind of talked. They didn't mask his voice enough for me to be like, these are 2 different people.
The only reason Naboo even needs to go to Coruscant is because their transmission cuts out with Palpatine, which obviously he did on purpose. When Amidala is speaking to the council, or to the,
committee.
I don't know what you'd call that, the committee or whatever, and I don't know if you guys kind of felt this way, but I noticed Senator Palpatine kept whispering in her ear, and she kept mirroring what he was saying. So I was sort of wondering if he was Jedi mind tricking her. Because she actually, at some point, looked like she didn't want to say what was coming out of her mouth.
Yeah, no, I saw it. And that's why the only time he really looks concerned is when she was like, no, I got to go back home and fight.
Exactly. I was like, fucking broke the Jedi mind trick, did we?
I have a note here that says the pod race is still badass. And did anybody notice that there's no soundtrack, there's no score until the very end when he and Sebulba are like duking it out? That's all just sound and...
There was one part of the pod race that just bothered me a little bit, just logistically speaking.
Is it the part where he uses the selfie stick to reattach the pod? The little
Yeah.
engine.
Well, the stick to reattach the engine and also rediverting the engine's power.
Why? You did that in the
Because
video game all the time.
this entire pod race, we've been seeing them like avoid obstacles. And he was staring down at that console for like a solid like 30 seconds, rediverting that power in the engine.
He kept looking back up and making his like Judge Dredd mouth.
But I mean, like, have you ever like texted while driving? Like,
No,
it's
I
not
never
like
have.
you're not
I've never done it.
like
I
exactly.
follow the law.
It's not that easy
I do
to look
it.
down and look back up.
So you guys were wondering, Anakin Skywalker wins the pod race. Despite all odds.
Mm-hmm.
He then gains his freedom because Qui-Gon Jinn bet his life, his freedom, on a fucking dice roll.
And Obi-Wan's response to this was, "Why do I sense we've picked up another pathetic life form?" And I was just like, "Oh shit, Obi-Wan's a dick."
Yeah, Obi-Wan, it's sibling rivalry.
Another pathetic life. So that means he thinks the Queen of Naboo is pathetic, R2-D2's pathetic.
But not Jar Jar and not
Jar
Captain
Jar,
Banaka.
yeah.
Because Banaka's keeping everybody's breath fresh. So then after they leave Tatooine, whilst in space, Anakin says it's really, really cold. And then they go to Coruscant, but he doesn't mention anything about it being really, really smoggy. If the whole city is a planet, I imagine it looks just like New York in Fifth Element. And there's a bunch of smog there. So why didn't he just get out of the plane and be like, or the ship and like, so smoggy. Oh, and did any of you guys notice the overacting when, so Anakin leaves with the Queen, and then Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon stay, and Anakin like looks at Qui-Gon like, should I go with you? Should I stay? And he's like, no, go. And he's like, should I stay? Should I stay? Looks like a fucking dog. So then, whilst in Coruscant, what happens?
That's where we found out about this
prophecy. The dialogue in this movie is just very, just very forgettable.
The Jedi are being a bunch of dickheads, and they're all like, that young man, he's too old. We only want little boys in here.
I think in the context of if this is your first time watching it, it's kind of like they come off as dicks, but if you're thinking like, oh, Anakin is Darth Vader, then you're like, oh, okay, like they can sense that.
Yeah, that doesn't hold water to me. That logic doesn't hold water. They're pedophiles.
It only holds water for me, for Yoda. Like the rest of the Jedi Council to me should have been like, oh yeah, he looks fine, and then Yoda should have been like, oh man, this guy's got some days ahead of him.
Yeah, but you know what? If they would have just not said the whole "he's too old" thing and just been like, "Nah, you know, his future's clouded. There's too much hate in him," I'd have been like, "Wow, yeah, okay, that makes sense." What do you guys think about that final battle in 4 parts, 4 simultaneous battles happening at the same time?
It was just all over the place.
May I try to speculate how you rank the battles?
Sure, go ahead.
I think your number 4, the one you cared about least, was the Gungan fighting the droids. I think just above that, number 3, was Queen Amidala running through hallways, shooting out windows, and fucking grappling hooking up walls.
Yep.
I think number 2 was probably Anakin flying around in the ship, overheating his engine, then accidentally exploding the reactor from the inside.
Yes.
And then I think number 1, the thing you cared about most, was a bunch of dudes dancing around each other with glow sticks.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. I don't understand why they wouldn't just keep those separate. I don't know. It definitely, as far as pacing goes, it was definitely way too slow. I did not care for some of those battles going on.
So how does it end?
This is the point where it ended for me, and I was just like, okay, I'm out. There was a point where they're like, oh, we destroyed a Sith or whatever, and they're like, which was destroyed? Master or Apprentice? And then it pans over to Palpatine, and I'm like, okay. You definitely want us to know that Palpatine's the Emperor.
Anakin has a nice haircut. Padme or Amidala looks at him and just gives him like a really toothy grin. And then I watched it with Mindy, and she was
that
like,
whole relationship,
yes.
like, god damn it.
Mindy was like, ew, that's gross. How old is she? And how old is he? Is he like 8 years old? 10 years old? Who knows?
But hey, man,
and
good
of course,
for him.
Yeah,
good
and
for
of course,
him.
when it comes to the next movies, they pretty much the same age suddenly.
The way the movie ends is they give fucking the Gungan big boss a disco ball, and everybody's like, yeah, and then it ends. Or one of those things you get at Spencer's that has the little purple lasers, and you put your hand on it, it's like, yeah. But yeah, basically, that's all Queen Amidala gives the Gungans, and she's like, we're buddies now, and then it ends. Okay, so how do you rate the sexiness of Darth Maul? Because when I was watching it with Mindy, she was like, he is so hot. Hot or not?
Hot.
Cool.
So
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Like, it needed more Darth Maul.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Our first and last episode of our podcast. How do you want to sign out, Ben?
Just have it end.
Just have it end?
Yeah. And that's our show. Thanks for listening, and follow us on Twitter. Yeah, thanks.
패드 드림 스프레이